In Pokémon Red and Blue version, there's an NPC that stops you from leaving town before you obtain your first starter Pokémon. That NPC is, of course, Professor Oak. It would be nothing short of insane for a young trainer to leave Pallet Town without a Pokémon. Pallet Town is a peaceful place, situated in between the lush Viridian City and the bright Cinnabar Island. Everyone gets nostalgic when they think of Pallet Town. Who doesn't remember the NPCs there? Since it's the beginning of the game and there's not much to do before leaving Pallet Town, every bit of NPC dialogue here is very memorable since it's the first thing we see before leaving on our Pokémon journey. So, what is every possible bit of dialogue we can hear before leaving Pallet Town for the first time, excluding game/story critical cutscene stuff with Professor Oak and Blue? Let's recap. Player name is playing the SNES. Okay, it's time to go. Right, all boys leave home someday. It said so on TV. Professor Oak next door is looking for you. There's a movie on TV. 4 boys are walking on railroad tracks. I better go too. Astute Pokémon fans, or film buffs, might already know this, but this bit of dialogue is a reference to the 1986 movie Stand By Me. Player's house. I'm raising Pokémon too. When they get strong, they can protect me. Technology is incredible. You can now store and recall items and Pokémon as data via PC. I gotta say, this works perfectly fine when Pokémon is a video game, but one of the reasons why I love the Pokémon anime so much is because they intentionally tried to make it less video gamey. One example is abandoning the whole PC storage thing. Pokémon living on Professor Oak's ranch is so much more of a fun concept. Plus, it gives Ash an excuse to interact with Oak once in a while, even when he's far away from Pallet Town. What's awesome is that this version of Pokémon Storage now exists in video game form in Pokémon Legends Arceus, as that game takes place in a time period that predates the existence of PCs. I study Pokémon as Professor Oak's aide. Professor Oak is the authority on Pokémon. Many Pokémon trainers hold him in high regard. You got that right. I study Pokémon as Professor Oak's aide. Yo, player name. Gramps isn't around. Those are Pokeballs. They contain Pokémon. Crammed full of Pokémon books. The save option is on the menu. Push start to open the menu. It's encyclopedia-like, but the pages are blank. It's canonically confirmed as early as Red and Blue version that the Pokédex is a device and not a physical book, but this line may confuse some. However, again, the Pokédex is actually a physical book that's completed through handwriting in Legends Arceus, which is really cool. There's an email message here. Calling all Pokémon trainers. The elite trainers of Pokémon League are ready to take on all comers. Bring your best Pokémon and see how you rate as a trainer. Pokémon League HQ, Indigo Plateau. P.S. Professor Oak, please visit us. Blue's house. Hi, player. Blue is out at Grandpa's lab. It's a big map. This is useful. A town map. Pallet Town. Shades of your journey await. Oak Pokémon Research Lab. Now, player, which Pokémon do you want? I don't need to be greedy like you. Go ahead and choose, player. If a wild Pokémon appears, your Pokémon can fight against it. My Pokémon looks a lot stronger. That's Professor Oak's last Pokémon. Player, raise your young Pokémon by making it fight. Player, you should take a quick rest. So, that is pretty much every bit of optional dialogue that Pallet Town has to offer in Gen 1. However, it's the Gen 1 remakes on the Game Boy Advance where this gets interesting. Let's take a look. While the original dialogue is mostly intact, there are small differences as well as some larger ones. Considering that this persists throughout the entire remakes, right now I'm only going to focus on interesting little details in Pallet Town. The first thing of note is that the game system in the player character's bedroom is different. In the original games, it was a SNES. In the remakes, it's an NES. It's a nicely made dresser, It will hold a lot of stuff. It's a posted notice. If you're confused, ask for help. Press the L or R button. Interestingly, if the female player character is selected at the start of the game, which wasn't an option in Red and Blue, the text for the home TV is changed. There's a movie on TV. A girl with her hair in pigtails is walking up a brick road. I better go too. This is also a movie reference, this time to The Wizard of Oz. The funniest thing about this is that this isn't the first time Pokémon made a Wizard of Oz reference.
What's happening? Why's the bridge shaking? You know that old saying, James.
You always heard the ones you love.
Team Rocket!
Who was he expecting, the Wizard of Oz? Shake him up, Jimmy boy.
Palms away.
Dishes and plates are neatly lined up. It smells delicious. Somebody's been cooking here. Blue's sister now has a name, Daisy. The dialogue for inspecting the map on the table is more descriptive this time. In addition, the thing hung on the wall this time is not a town map, but instead an artwork of Clefairy called The Lovely and Sweet Clefairy. Oak's lab is pretty much the same except for a couple more interactable objects, including this machine. The most interesting thing for me here is that the Pokédex text still explicitly refers to the Pokédex as having pages, when they could have easily just changed it, meaning that they must have found the original description charming enough to keep it in the remake. Outside in Pallet Town, the technology guy is in his original spot and just as iconic as ever. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Remember this lady from Red and Blue? Instead of being on the far west side of town, she now stands in front of this sign. Is that right? Oh, look! Talk to her again and she says, read it! Trainer tips, press start to open the menu. Talk to her again. Signs are useful, aren't they? After this, she will return to her original spot with her original dialogue. Okay, so, believe it or not, there is a very obscure piece of dialogue related to this NPC that most casual players who haven't played the game a lot are most likely to never see or notice. The dialogue itself isn't anything mind-blowing, but I find its implementation fascinating in a kind of weird way. So, how is it triggered and what makes it obscure? Well, let me ask this. What do most people do upon immediately starting a new Pokémon game? Maybe they walk around their room, check the PC, I don't know, maybe open the menu, see what options are available, look at the bag, look at their new trainer card, maybe save the game. If not now, if they're not a complete casual, maybe in front of the starter Pokémon to reset for good stats? Well, it turns out that this NPC's behavior during the beginning of the game is actually determined by, and I'm not kidding, whether or not the player has ever pressed the start button to bring up the menu in between the time the game started and when they exit Oak's lab after the first battle against Blue. If you're some kind of insane person who didn't press start, instead of going back to her original spot, this NPC will instead be waiting at the top of Pallet Town in front of the exit. When the player tries to leave, she will first stop them and say this. Look! I copied what it said on one of those trainer tips signs. Trainer tips, press start to open the menu. After that, she'll stay there and say, signs are useful, aren't they? I don't know what to say about this. This is so funny to me. I know that Fire Red and Leaf Green added very small amounts of tutorializing to make the games more accessible to first-time players, but the fact that the developers explicitly went out of their way to make sure that the player would be 100% guaranteed to see a line of text, that the start button of all things would bring up the game's menu is downright hilarious. I mean, it's the start button. What else would it do? Had I not restarted this game so many times growing up, I would have never found out about this. Like, I can't get over this all this time later. The game literally has a flag that gets checked off over a literal, random, insignificant button press during a super specific window of play. Also, upon leaving Pallet Town, she does not immediately move back to the default position. even when off-screen while the player is near the bottom of Route 1. Even entering a wild Pokémon encounter doesn't do anything. However, going far enough from town will cause her position to change. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? I'm sure there are quite a few Pokémon players out there who already know about this detail, but I'll bet there are just as many who had no idea this was even a thing. Before I'm done, how about a couple more interesting bits of pre-Viridian Forest Kanto trivia? This stuff is pretty well known, but I thought I'd still mention it just in case there's anyone out there who's never noticed. In the original Red and Blue games, the first rival battle, as far as I'm aware, has no significance in how the rest of the game plays out. Interestingly enough, in Yellow version, though, it does in a really neat way. Blue starts out with an Eevee, but it is, in fact, the outcome of the first battle with him, combined with the possible battle and outcome of the battle west of Viridian City in the early game, which determines the Pokémon which Blue evolves his Eevee into in the future. If you win against Blue during the first battle, but either skip the Route 22 battle, or battle but don't win the optional battle here, he gets Jolteon. If you win against Blue both times, he gets Flareon.
Don't win either battle, and of course your rival gets Vaporeon.
Furthermore, 2 of the Pokémon on his team will be different in later rival battles, depending on what Eevee evolved into. I'm not going to list the details of every encounter, because it's really easy to look up, what with the internet and that, but it's interesting that this feature is carried all the way to the final champion battle. It's actually quite cool, because it makes his team more balanced, with no chance of 2 of the same type on it. For the final battle, if he has Vaporeon, the unique Pokémon are Ninetales, level 61, and Magneton, level 63. For Jolteon, it's Cloyster, level 61, and Ninetales, level 63. For Flareon, it's Magneton, level 61, and Cloyster, level 63. This feature is really cool. It's funny how at this point in the series, we're 8 generations deep, almost 9, and Blue is still one of the best champion battles. Obviously, Gold and Silver are overall better games, but one of the things Gen 1 objectively did better was the champion battle. I'm sorry, Lance, but your team is unbalanced. One last thing before I end this. Since I'm on the topic of Kanto games, when I first played Let's Go Eevee, I completely missed out on something in the beginning of the game that maybe some others did too. Remember the guy who blocks your path in Viridian City before you deliver Oak's parcel? In the Japanese version, he outright had too much to drink. In the US version, he's, hung over. I know they tried to censor this, but the English text literally made me think he was hungover even as a kid. He, quote, had his coffee, so he feels better. Anyways, in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, he no longer blocks your path, but instead it's an early game appearance of Jesse and James before the player is formally introduced to them. I know it's probably just a coincidence, but in my own made-up canon, I'd like to believe that they're there because they're about to attack the Viridian Pokémon Center off-screen, just like in the anime. Anyways, this deep dive into random Pokémon facts has gone on long enough. Stay tuned for next time when I actually talk about something more relevant. I really want to give my thoughts on the Pokémon series as it stands today, and where I think it's headed in terms of quality, because I think I actually have a unique insight to all of it. Until next time, don't forget to enjoy the weather if it's nice out.